first thing I smelled was cedar and whiskey. The second thing I noticed was a heartbeat. Slow, steady, pressed flush against my spine like it belonged there. The third thing I thought was, I am completely and utterly cooked. My name is Jasper Hayes, 28 years old. Omega, licensed architect, owner of exactly one houseplant named Gerald, who is barely surviving on tap water and my good intentions. I am not the kind of person who wakes up in strange places. I have a bedtime routine. I use a planner. I color code my calendar like a person with their life together. And yet, here I was, horizontal, in a bed that was not mine, in sheets that smelled like someone I would recognize anywhere, in any crowd, any city, on any room on this entire earth, because that scent had been the background noise of my life for the last 11 years. Cole Merritt, Alpha, CEO of Merritt Capital. The kind of man who walked into rooms and made the air change temperature. 6'2", broad-shouldered, jaw like it was designed specifically to make bad decisions feel reasonable. My best friend since sophomore year at UConn, back when he was just a reckless 19-year-old alpha with a full scholarship and a God complex still under construction. Now he was a 30-year-old God complex with a corner office in Hartford, Connecticut. And apparently, I shifted carefully, barely breathing, my scent all over his skin. Oh no, I didn't move. I lay there like a fossil, staring at the ceiling of his penthouse bedroom, or doing what I did best under pressure, running a silent, internal catastrophe dressed up as calm. That's when my gift surfaced. It never announced itself. Just a soft, uninvited pull behind my eyes, a curtain lifting. And I wasn't entirely in the room anymore. I was in his dream walking. That's my thing. I don't advertise it. I definitely don't post about it. I did not ask for the ability to slip sideways into someone's sleeping consciousness like an uninvited house guest with boundary issues. But here's what 11 years of friendship taught me about this particular ability. I only ever walked into dreams I was already standing inside. Cole was dreaming about a shoreline, quiet gray-blue water. Someone standing at the edge, small against the horizon, hands stuffed into a jacket, not moving. Me. A dream Cole was watching dream me like he was memorizing something he was terrified of losing. I yanked myself back into my body so fast I nearly gasped out loud. Absolutely not. We are not processing that right now. Gerald needs me alive. I sat up slowly. The room was dim, early morning light cutting through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Hartford. Cole's penthouse was immaculate, the way only spaces belonging to emotionally unavailable men ever were. Expensive, achingly beautiful, and quietly hollow. Art on the walls he'd never explained. A bookshelf organized by color instead of title, because Cole Merritt would rather look curated than be understood. Story of his entire life. I found my shirt on the floor, one shoe near the door, on the other one across the room entirely, which told me something about last night that my memory was choosing, very wisely, to release in small and survivable fragments. The company rooftop event, open bar, Cole's colleagues radiating big watch energy and firm handshakes. Me, overdressed and deeply unimpressed, refilling my glass every time someone used the word synergy without irony. Cole had leaned close at some point. Too close, the way he got when bourbon dissolved whatever he kept locked behind that polished CEO surface. He'd said something low against my ear. I'd laughed. He'd looked at me after, not laughing at all, his dark eyes steady in that particular way of his that always felt like a question he never planned to ask out loud. Then, fragments, warm light, his hand at the small of my back, the elevator, his voice, unhurried and rough, mine not pulling away. I pressed my palms against my eyes and breathed through it. 11 years. 11 years of knowing Cole Merritt, knowing how he took his coffee, which side of the bed he preferred, the exact silence he wore when something was eating him alive. 11 years of being the one person he let pass the surface he showed everyone else. I had never, not once, let myself look at him differently. Because Cole was the kind of man you didn't look at sideways unless you were ready to lose everything. And I was not someone who lost things. I kept things. I organized things. I kept Gerald alive through pure spite and a carefully maintained watering schedule. The sheets shifted behind me. Jasper! His voice was low, a rough with sleep, the kind of low that did something irritating to the back of my neck that I was going to spend the rest of the morning aggressively ignoring. I turned. Cole was propped on one elbow, dark hair slightly undone for once in his meticulously constructed life. His eyes were on me, fully awake, fully present, holding something I didn't have a clean label for yet. Something careful, something that looked uncomfortably exactly like what I'd just seen in his dream. "Morning," I said, calm, composed, absolutely fine. He didn't smile. He just watched me the way Hartford looked at sunrise, like it was holding something back and had been for a long time. "We need to talk," he said quietly, and my stomach dropped clean through the floor. "We need to talk." 3 words, 4 syllables. The emotional equivalent of a fire alarm going off in a building you just got comfortable in. I stared at Cole Merritt, CEO, Alpha, certified architect of my current psychological crisis, and did what any reasonable, grounded, emotionally intelligent person would do in this situation. I laughed, not a small laugh, a full, slightly unhinged laugh that bounced off his expensive walls and probably offended his color-coded bookshelf. "Okay," I said, pressing my knuckles against my mouth to cork the rest of it. "Sure, yeah, we can talk. Right after you explain why one of my shoes ended up across the room like it was launched from a catapult." Cole blinked. Something shifted in his expression. Not annoyance, not quite. More like a man recalibrating. He sat up fully, sheets pooling at his waist, and ran one hand through his hair in that slow, deliberate way he had when he was choosing his next words like they were evidence in a courtroom. "Jasper." "Cole, I'm being serious. I know you are. That's what's scaring me. You only use that voice when you're about to say something that's going to make my left eye twitch." His jaw tightened. "Your left eye? It's my stress eye. Gerald knows about it. We don't talk about it. You named your plant Gerald. He has a strong name for a difficult economy. Focus, please." Cole exhaled through his nose. Long, controlled. The exhale of a man who had survived board meetings and hostile acquisitions and apparently one catastrophic evening with his Omega best friend and was still somehow not running for the door. That alone told me something I wasn't ready to examine. I got up, found my second shoe near the nightstand, of course, and sat on the edge of the bed to put it on. Physical task, concrete movement. My hands only trembled slightly, which I was counting as a personal victory. "Last night," Cole started. "Happened," I finished. "Yes, I was there. Allegedly." "Jasper." "Cole." He moved. Not dramatically. Just shifted forward on the bed until he was sitting closer than the conversation required. Close enough that his scent wrapped around me again. Cedar and something warmer underneath. Something that my Omega biology had the absolute audacity to recognize as safe. My shoulders wanted to drop. My spine wanted to curve toward him. I told both of them to mind their business. "I remember everything," he said quietly. "Do you?" That landed differently than I expected. Not like an accusation. Like something careful. Like he was holding a glass he was afraid to set down wrong. I looked at him sideways. "Define everything." "The elevator. What you said. What I said." A pause. "What we both did." The back of my neck went warm, not from embarrassment exactly, from the specific and inconvenient sensation of a memory surfacing that my brain had conveniently filed under "do not open until emotionally prepared." His hand, warm and certain, at the curve of my jaw. My own voice, softer than I ever let it get in daylight. The way he'd looked at me before, not like his best friend, not like someone familiar, like something he'd been circling for a long time and had finally gotten close enough to touch. I cleared my throat. I remember a reasonable amount. That's not an answer. It's the answer I have right now, Cole. Hey, give me a minute. I'm still buffering. He almost smiled. Almost. The corner of his mouth moved exactly 2 millimeters in a direction that, on any other face, would have been a full expression. On Cole Merritt, it was practically a confessional. You're not freaking out, he observed. I'm absolutely freaking out. I've just had 11 years of practice doing it quietly. Silence settled between us. Not uncomfortable exactly. The kind of silence that had weight to it, that pressed on the chest like something waiting to be named. Outside, Hartford was waking up. Pale morning light spreading across the skyline. Traffic beginning its low hum 20 floors below. I looked at my shoe, then at the window. Then, because I apparently had no self-preservation instincts left, at Cole. He was already looking at me. Not the way he looked at quarterly projections or acquisition targets, or any of the 12 things I knew occupied his mind on a normal morning. He was looking at me the way he had in his dream, the one he didn't know I'd walk through, standing at the edge of that gray shoreline like I was something he was afraid the tide would take. My ability pulsed softly behind my eyes, not pushing, just there, reminding me that whatever Cole Merritt was holding behind that steady expression, I had already seen it wearing his face while he slept. I wasn't ready to say that out loud. Cole? I said his name carefully this time, like I was setting it down instead of throwing it. What exactly are you trying to tell me? He looked at his hands, then back at me. And for the first time in 11 years, Cole Merritt looked like a man who did not have a prepared answer. I don't know how to say it without changing everything. The air between us shifted, small, seismic. Then maybe, I said slowly, you should start with what you actually remember. He met my eyes. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard. And I have attended a UConn homecoming game with Cole Merritt, who screamed himself hoarse over a field goal and then acted dignified about it for the entire drive home. I know loud. This was louder. Cole opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, which, for context, was the equivalent of watching a skyscraper develop self-doubt. Cole Merritt did not fumble words. Cole Merritt gave keynote addresses to rooms full of people who managed billion-dollar portfolios. Cole Merritt once talked a hostile investor down from a public breakdown using nothing but measured sentences and direct eye contact. And right now he was sitting on his own bed, looking at me like the words he needed had been discontinued. Take your time, I said generously. I brought absolutely nowhere to be. You're not helping. I'm stress helping. It's a different thing. Ask Gerald. He exhaled, looked at the window, looked back at me, and then, in a voice quieter than his normal register, quieter than I had heard from him in years, he said it. I remember pulling you close in the elevator because I didn't want the night to end. My brain performed an immediate and thorough system error. I kept my face neutral. And this was a skill I had developed over 11 years of being Cole Merritt's closest friend, while also being a person with functioning eyes and terrible taste in emotional attachments. I had gotten very good at neutral. Okay, I said. I remember that you laughed at something I said. The real laugh, not the polite one. I have many laughs, they're all real. You know the one I mean. I did, I absolutely did. I was not going to confirm that. Cole leaned forward slightly, not aggressively, just toward me, the way something leans when it stopped pretending it doesn't have a direction it wants to go. And I remember, he continued, thinking that I should stop, that this was a line I couldn't uncross, that you were my best friend and I had exactly one of those, and I wasn't built to lose you. Something moved in my chest. Something I immediately put in a box and sat on. Solid reasoning, I said. Very logical. Very you. And then I didn't stop. Also very you, actually. He almost laughed. That 2-millimeter mouth movement again. But his eyes stayed serious, and that was the problem with Cole Merritt. His eyes never participated in the performance the rest of his face was running. They always said the true thing. Right now they were saying something that my omega instincts understood before my rational brain could translate it. I stood up, not running, just needing to exist vertically for a moment. I walked to his window because the Hartford skyline was a neutral object, and I needed one of those. 20 floors below, the city was doing its morning things, completely unbothered by the emotional restructuring happening up here. Cole, I said to the window. Yeah, we have been best friends since we were 19 years old. I know. You have seen me eat an entire Thanksgiving meal, cold at 2 in the morning, because I forgot to reheat it and then refused to admit defeat. You called it a strategic pivot. Because it was. The point is you know me, the actual me, not a version of me, not the idea of me. You know about Gerald and my stress eye, and the fact that I still can't parallel park without a mild internal prayer. You're getting better at it. I hit a cone last Tuesday. The cone was badly placed. I turned from the window. Cole was watching me across the room with an expression I couldn't fully categorize, and it was irritating me. I was good at reading people. That was practically a professional skill at this point, and enhanced by an ability that let me literally walk through their dreams. And yet Cole Merritt, who I knew better than I knew most of my own memories, was sitting there looking at me with something I had no clean file for. My ability stirred, soft, curious. I pressed it back down. Whatever was happening needed to happen in the real world, in real time, without me cheating. What are you actually asking me, Cole? He stood up then, moved across the room at his usual unhurried pace. The kind of pace that made boardrooms nervous because it suggested a man who had already decided and was simply arriving at the conclusion. He stopped a reasonable distance away, respectful, careful in a way that was different from his usual control, because this wasn't about managing a situation. This was about not wanting to wreck one. Yeah, I'm not asking you anything, he said. I'm telling you something, because I'm done knowing it by myself. My pulse did something inconvenient. Last night wasn't the bourbon, he said. The bourbon just turned the volume down on everything I used to keep my mouth shut. The box in my chest with the thing I had been sitting on for 11 years developed a structural issue. Cole, I know the timing is terrible. The timing is catastrophic. I know. We are standing in your bedroom. I'm aware. Where things occurred. Also aware. I looked at him. He looked at me. Hartford hummed 20 floors below, completely unqualified to assist with this situation. I need coffee, I said finally. I cannot process a revelation of this magnitude on an empty stomach. That is not a rejection. However, that is a biological requirement. Cole blinked. Then he nodded slowly, like a man recalibrating. I have a coffee maker. I assumed you have everything. I don't have everything. The way he said it was quiet, pointed, aimed with the kind of precision that made it land exactly where he intended. I walked past him toward the kitchen before my face could do something irreversible. His kitchen was aggressively beautiful. Marble countertops, pendant lighting that probably cost more per fixture than my monthly rent, a coffee maker that looked like it had been designed by engineers who took the concept of morning beverages personally. Everything clean, everything considered, everything placed with the kind of intentionality that told you the person who lived here used order as armor. I knew that about Cole already. I had known it for 11 years. I just had never stood in his kitchen the morning after completely dismantling the comfortable architecture of our friendship, staring at his espresso machine like it personally owed me an explanation. Top cabinet, Cole said, coming in behind me. Mugs are on the left. I wasn't looking for mugs. I was having a moment with your countertop. How's that going? Surprisingly supportive. No judgment. Excellent surface. He reached past me to open the cabinet. His arm passed close enough that his scent moved with him, cedar and warmth, and my omega instincts did that thing again. That deeply inconvenient, biologically enthusiastic thing where they recognized his scent like a returning frequency and just settled, like a signal locking in. I pulled a mug down before he could hand me one. Autonomy. Very important right now. Cole set up the coffee maker with the quiet efficiency of someone who had done it 10,000 times. No fumbling, no unnecessary movement. Everything purposeful, everything measured. Watching Cole do ordinary things had always been a specific kind of problem for me. And I was only now starting to understand why I had never examined that problem too closely. The machine started. The kitchen filled with the sound of something beginning. I sat on a bar stool at his kitchen island because standing felt too much like being ready to leave, and I had told him this wasn't a rejection. I had meant it. I was almost certain I had meant it. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Yes." "How long?" Not a question exactly. More like a doorway I was opening 1 inch to see what was on the other side. Cole was quiet for a moment. His back was to me, both hands resting on the counter. His shoulders moved with one slow breath. Then he said, "Long enough that I stopped counting." My fingers tightened around the empty mug. "Cole, you asked." "I did ask. I am now processing the answer. Give me 4 to 6 business days." He turned around then and leaned against the counter with his arms crossed, watching me with that expression again. The one I needed a new file for. It was patient and certain, and very slightly terrified in a way only visible if you knew exactly where to look on his face. I knew where to look. "You're not running," he said. "I don't run. I make strategic retreats. There's a difference." You walked past me toward the kitchen. That was a strategic retreat toward caffeine. Completely valid. "Jasper." "I'm right here, Cole. I'm sitting at your island. I'm not going anywhere." Something in his posture shifted. Small, like a tension that had been held a long time releasing 1 degree. The coffee maker finished. He poured without asking how I wanted it because he already knew. 2 sugars, a splash of oat milk, enough coffee to actually taste like coffee. He set it in front of me and then poured his own, black, no ceremony, and sat on the bar stool across the island. We drank in silence for a moment. This was one of my favorite things about us, and it was a terrible time to be thinking about it. We had always been able to do this. Sit in the same quiet without needing to fill it. Most people made Cole nervous in the way powerful things made people nervous. Too much gravity, not enough access. But he had always been easy with me in the spaces between words, and I had always been easy with him. Now the silence had a shape to it, a new one. "I need to tell you something," I said into my coffee. "Okay. And I need you to not make it weird." "When have I ever made something weird?" I looked at him over the rim of my mug. "Tuesday, February, 3 years ago. You made the entire thing weird. That was a misunderstanding involving a scented candle and a coworker with strong opinions." "Cole, it was extremely weird." He pressed his mouth together. "Fair. Continue." I set my mug down, looked at the counter, then at him, because this deserved eye contact, even if eye contact was currently the most dangerous terrain available. "I have a thing," I said carefully. "An ability. You know I have it. Yet we have never had a full conversation about it, but you have seen it happen twice, and you were polite enough not to interrogate me about it, and I have always appreciated that." Cole nodded slowly. "The dream thing. The dream thing. Okay. This morning, before I woke up fully." I paused, picked my words like I was choosing structural supports. "I walked through yours." The kitchen went very still. Cole's hands were wrapped around his mug. His expression didn't collapse or perform. It just went careful in a way that meant he was feeling something he hadn't decided how to hold yet. "The shore," he said quietly. "You knew I was there." "I always know when you're there." His voice was steady, the steadiness of something that had decided to stop pretending it was something else. "In the dream, Emma, you were standing at the edge of the water, and I could never get close enough, no matter how far I walked. My chest did something that was going to require a lot of quiet time and at least one difficult conversation with Gerald later tonight." "Cole," I said softly. "Yeah. Your feelings are not the problem." He went still. "My feelings," I continued, holding his gaze, "are the problem because I have them, and they are inconvenient and badly timed, and I have been rearranging them into the shape of friendship for a very long time." His eyes held mine across the counter, steady, certain, and now something else. Something that looked, for the first time, like relief. "How long?" he asked quietly. I picked up my coffee, took a slow sip. "Long enough that I stopped counting." His breath left him. quiet, like something unlocking. And neither of us said anything for a long moment, because some things, once said out loud, need space to become real. I was giving it space, generous amounts of space, practically a whole zip code of space. Cole was looking at me across the island with the expression of a man who had just watched a building he thought was abandoned turn all its lights on simultaneously. Not frightened exactly, more like recalibrating everything he thought he understood about the floor plan. I understood the feeling. I was about to say something reasonable and measured and probably slightly funny to keep the emotional pressure from reaching critical levels. I had a whole sentence prepared. It was a good sentence. Then his phone buzzed. Not once. 3 times rapid, the way a phone buzzed when someone was not interested in being ignored. Cole's jaw tightened. He didn't look at it immediately, which told me he already knew who it was. He kept his eyes on me for one more second, like he was making a deliberate choice about where his attention belonged. And then he glanced down at the screen. Something moved across his face. Quick. Controlled. Gone before most people would have caught it. I caught it. "Everything okay?" I asked. "It's fine." "Cole, you just looked at your phone like it said something in a language you hoped you had forgotten." He set the phone face down on the counter. Deliberate. Careful in the specific way of a man managing information flow. CEO behavior. The kind of behavior I had seen him deploy in professional settings when something needed to be contained before it became a headline. He had never used it with me before. Not a my ability moved behind my eyes. Not invasive, just present. A soft pressure, like a hand on a door. Not pushing, just resting there, aware. "Who was that?" I asked, still calm, still casual. Sipping my coffee like I was not watching his body language with the focused attention of someone who had spent 11 years learning its vocabulary. Someone from work. At 7 in the morning. It's a demanding industry. "Cole, Jasper, you put your phone face down." I always put my phone face down. You put it face down the way someone puts a photograph face down because they don't want to explain who's in it. The kitchen went quiet again. Different quality than before. Before, the quiet had been full. This one had an edge. Cole picked up his coffee, took a slow sip, set it down. All the movements of a man buying himself exactly enough time to decide how much of the truth he planned to use. I had known him for 11 years. I knew every version of that pause. "There's something I should have told you," he said, "a while ago." My stomach moved in a direction I didn't love. Define a while. 6 months. I set my mug down very gently because I was a composed and reasonable person. 6 months. It wasn't the right time. And now you're sitting in my kitchen the morning after telling me you have feelings for me. So the window for perfect timing has officially closed. Despite everything, I almost laughed. "That's fair. Continue." Cole looked at the counter, then at me. His expression had settled into something I recognized from the very rare occasions when Cole Merritt was about to say something that cost him something real. "You remember Marcus Webb?" The name landed in my chest like a stone dropped in still water. Ripples moved outward through 11 years of stored memory, finding every surface they could touch. Marcus Webb, alpha, venture capitalist. Hartford's most charming problem in an expensive suit. Cole's former business partner, the one who had exited Merritt Capital 2 years ago under circumstances Cole had described as a mutual and professional decision, and I had always privately suspected was something uglier with better publicist work. "I remember him," I said carefully. "He's been in contact. With you, with me, and..." Cole paused. One breath. "Osh, with you." The counter was very cool under my fingertips. I noticed this because I needed something concrete to focus on while my brain performed its second full system error of the morning. "Say that again." "He reached out to me 6 months ago. Said he had been watching your work, your firm's redesign project for the Whitmore building in New Haven. He wanted to discuss a development opportunity." Cole's voice was even, controlled, the evenness of something being held very still. "I told him you weren't interested. I stared at him. Without asking me, yes. Cole, you intercepted a professional communication directed at me. I did, and made a decision about my career on my behalf. I know how that sounds. Does it sound like something a person does when they are trying to protect someone? Or does it sound like something a person does when they know something about Marcus Webb that they haven't shared? The silence that followed was a different animal entirely from every silence that had come before it in this kitchen. This one had teeth. Cole set his mug down, looked at me directly, the way he only did when he was done managing the edges of a conversation and was coming at it straight. Marcus Webb has been building a case against 2 Omega professionals in Hartford for the last 18 months. Quietly, using professional relationships as access points. Getting close, building trust, extracting proprietary information, and then leveraging it. His voice was steady, but something underneath it was not. One of the Omegas involved filed a private complaint 8 weeks ago. I found out through my attorney. The second one doesn't know yet that they were targeted. My breath came out slow. You think I was the second one? I know you were. The kitchen felt different now. The beautiful marble counter and the expensive pendant lights and the coffee maker, designed by serious engineers, all felt very far away. I was sitting very still, which was what I did when something hit hard enough that movement felt dangerous. You've known this for 6 months, I said, and you didn't tell me. I was trying to handle it without pulling you into something that would have required you to relive every professional interaction you had with him. Cole, that was my choice to make. I know. You don't get to protect me from my own information. I know that too. Then why? He looked at me, and for the first time all morning, the thing behind his eyes wasn't careful or measured or controlled. It was just raw, just real. The face of someone who had carried something heavy in a direction they believed was right and had arrived at the destination to find it wasn't the destination they thought. Because losing you was already something I couldn't think about clearly, he said quietly. And Marcus Webb was standing at the edges of your life with intentions I understood better than you did. And I reacted. Not like a CEO, like someone who was terrified. My ability pulsed, soft, insistent. I let it open just slightly, just enough. And what I felt from him wasn't manipulation or control or the comfortable arrogance of an alpha who thought he knew better. It was fear, old, specific, and very human fear. The kind that lived in the chest of someone who had already lost something they couldn't name and was quietly, desperately trying to not lose something else. I pulled back from the connection before he could feel it. Then I looked at my coffee, then at him. I am, I said, measuring each word, extremely irritated with you. I know. This is not resolved. I didn't expect it to be. But I picked up my mug, held it in both hands. I also need you to tell me everything you know about Marcus Webb, starting from the beginning, and I need you to not manage how much you tell me this time. All of it, Cole. He nodded. Once, serious. All of it, he agreed. And the look on his face told me that all of it was going to be a very long morning. He started talking. I had a rule about listening, a professional habit, and it's the kind you develop when your job required you to sit across from clients who described what they wanted in the least useful possible terms and extract the actual truth buried underneath. You stay still. You don't react on the surface. You let the information land and settle before you decide what to do with it. I was using every ounce of that skill right now. Cole talked for 20 minutes straight. No pauses to manage my reaction. No careful edits. All of it. The way I had asked. The way he had promised. Marcus Webb and the complaint filed 8 weeks ago by a contract attorney named Devin Park, who had worked briefly with Webb's firm before realizing what was happening. The proprietary design data Marcus had quietly extracted from 2 separate Omega professionals over 18 months, packaging their intellectual work under different documentation and presenting it to investors as Webb Capital Innovation. The way he operated, building access through proximity, through warmth, through the specific kind of charm that felt like genuine interest until you were deep enough in that pulling back cost you professionally. the way he had shown up at the Whitmore Building reception 14 months ago. Shaken my hand, told me my instincts for spatial design were rare, asked if I'd ever considered a consulting partnership. I had thought he was networking. I had thought he was just another alpha in the Hartford financial circuit, doing what alphas in the Hartford financial circuit did, which was collect useful people and call it relationship building. I had given him a business card. He contacted your firm twice after that, Cole said, through your assistant, framed as development consultation inquiries. I found out because Devon Park's complaint listed your firm name as an intended third target. When I called in a favor with my attorney to get the details, your professional contact history with Webb was already in the documentation. I was quiet for a moment. You called in a favor? Yes. To get information about an ongoing private legal situation. I have a good attorney and a long-standing relationship built on mutual discretion. Cole, that is an extremely CEO thing to say. I am extremely a CEO. I know, it's annoying. Continue. He almost smiled. Almost. Then his expression settled back into the serious register it had been holding for the last 20 minutes. Oh, the one that told me we were not close to the end of this particular story. Devon Park's attorney reached out to mine last week, he said. They want a third corroborating account to strengthen the case. Someone with documented professional contact with Webb and evidence of his approach pattern. He paused. It would need to be voluntary, and it would require you to go on record. I looked at my coffee. It had gone slightly cold during his 20 minutes of all of it, but I drank it anyway because the situation called for caffeine at whatever temperature it arrived. So, I said slowly, you intercepted a professional inquiry directed at me, conducted parallel legal information gathering on my behalf without my knowledge, and have now presented me with an opportunity to participate in a legal case against a man I considered a harmless networking contact. I set the mug down. Before breakfast. You've had coffee. Coffee is not breakfast, Cole. Coffee is a beverage and a coping mechanism. It does not have food groups. I can make eggs. You absolutely cannot make eggs right now. We are in the middle of something. He leaned forward on the counter, both forearms down, hands loosely linked, close enough that I could see the tension he was carrying in his shoulders without performing it for the room. Cole never performed discomfort. He just wore it quietly in his posture while his face stayed arranged. I know I overstepped, he said. I know that taking that call and making that decision without telling you was wrong regardless of the reason. I'm not asking you to be okay with it. Good, because I'm not okay with it. I know. I'm also not going to pretend I don't understand why you did it. Something shifted in his posture. Fractional. Real. Understanding it and being okay with it are two completely separate things, I continued. I can hold both. I am very talented. You are, he said quietly. Not performing the agreement, just stating it. My ability moved again. Softer this time. Not reaching, just present. The way it got when the emotional temperature in a room was high enough to activate it passively. I wasn't in his dream this time. I was just close enough to feel the shape of what he was carrying. It was heavy. It had been heavy for a long time. I stood up from the bar stool and walked around the island. Not with a plan exactly. More the way you move when your body has made a decision before your brain has finished the committee meeting. I stopped next to him, close but not pressing, and leaned my own forearms on the counter beside his. We stood like that for a moment, looking at the same marble surface, shoulders almost touching. For the record, I said to the countertop, the reason I'm not walking out of your kitchen right now is not because I'm a pushover. I know. It's because you are the most frustrating, overprotective, emotionally constipated alpha I have ever had the misfortune of caring about. And I have apparently been caring about you in a direction I didn't fully acknowledge for long enough that walking out would just be lying to myself in a different location. Cole turned his head. I felt it more than saw it. The shift of his attention landing on the side of my face with a weight I had always pretended was just friendship. Jasper, I'm still irritated. I know. I'm going to need a full apology. A real one. Not a CEO apology where you acknowledge the optics and outline corrective measures. An actual human apology. I can do that, and I'm going to need you to never make a decision about my professional life without my knowledge again. Agreed. And I need eggs. I have reconsidered. I need breakfast immediately. He laughed, a real one. Low and quiet and rare the way genuine things were rare from Cole Merritt, and it moved through the kitchen like something that had needed to exist in this room for a long time. I turned my head, found him looking at me from close range, the way the morning had been building toward without either of us calling it by its name. "Hi," I said stupidly. "Hi," he said back, and then his hand moved, slow, deliberate, the back of his fingers against my jaw, barely contact, barely pressure, the kind of touch that asked a question instead of assuming an answer. My breath adjusted without my permission. "Still irritated?" he murmured. "Genuinely, yes," I said. "Extremely. This changes nothing about the irritation." "Noted." He leaned in, slow enough that I could have moved, slow enough that every centimeter of the distance closing between us was a choice I was actively making. His mouth met mine soft, not urgent, not the way last night's fragments suggested last night had been. This was different. This was deliberate and careful. Oh, and tasted like coffee and something I did not have a clean word for yet, but that felt, in a way I was not prepared for, like the thing I had been rearranging my feelings around for 11 years, finally standing up straight. I kissed him back. My ability flared warm behind my eyes, not invading, just responding to proximity and emotion and the particular frequency of this specific alpha who had apparently been living in my subconscious as a permanent resident, while I handed him a label that said friend and tried to make it fit. He pulled back first, barely, just enough to look at me. "Still want eggs?" he asked quietly. I considered this very seriously. "Yes," I said, "but that was good. I want to note that that was good before we move on to breakfast logistics." "Noted," he said again. And this time the 2-millimeter mouth movement became something larger, something that changed the whole shape of his face. I stored that image somewhere I plan to revisit later. "Okay," I said, pushing off the counter and moving toward the refrigerator with the energy of a man who had just made several major life decisions before 8 in the morning and needed protein to process them. "Where are your eggs? And while we cook, you are going to tell me everything else about Marcus Webb because I have a decision to make, and I make better decisions with food in my system." Cole moved to the cabinet beside me, pulled it open, handed me a pan without being asked. "Everything else," he confirmed. "And Cole?" "Yeah." I looked at him over my shoulder. "Next time you find out someone is targeting me, you tell me first. Before the attorney calls, before the favor. You tell me." He held my gaze. "First," he agreed. It wasn't forgiveness yet. It wasn't the clean resolution of everything the morning had uncovered, but it was a direction, and standing in his kitchen, with a pan in my hand and his scent settled around me like something that had decided to stay, a direction felt like enough to start with. For now. That was the word I kept returning to, while Cole cracked eggs into a bowl with the focused precision of a man who approached scrambled eggs the same way he approached quarterly forecasts, methodically, intentionally, like chaos was something that happened to other people. I sat back on the bar stool and watched him cook and tried to organize the last 2 hours of my life into something with a comprehensible filing system. Item 1. I had woken up in Cole Merritt's bed. Item 2. Cole Merritt had feelings. Long-standing, apparently poorly contained feelings that had survived 11 years of proximity and were now standing in the open air, blinking like something that had lived underground for too long. Item 3. I also had feelings. This was inconvenient and not entirely surprising in retrospect. The retrospect being the extremely clarifying lens of having kissed him in his kitchen 20 minutes ago and not wanted to stop. Item 4. Marcus Webb was a predator in a good suit who had been building a case against Omega professionals in Hartford and had my business card in a file somewhere. Item 4 was the one giving me problems. Cole set a plate in front of me, eggs, toast, sliced fruit arranged with unnecessary elegance on the side. I looked at the fruit. "Did you plate the strawberries decoratively?" "I have standards." "Cole, it is 7:45 in the morning and I am in last night's clothes. The strawberries don't care about your outfit. I ate a strawberry. It was an excellent strawberry. Everything in Cole Merritt's kitchen was excellent, and it was genuinely irritating. We ate in the kind of quiet that had recalibrated again, softer now, the edge from earlier blunted by eggs and honesty, and one careful kiss that had rearranged several things inside me that I was still taking inventory of. Cole ate standing on the other side of the island because Cole Merritt did not sit at his own kitchen island, apparently. He stood like a man who considered full relaxation a strategic vulnerability. 11 years and I was still finding new things to catalog about him. "As you tell me the rest," I said, halfway through my toast. He looked up. "About Webb. You said there was more. You were building to something before the eggs happened. Finish it." Cole set his fork down, slow, deliberate, the movement of a man who had been hoping the eggs would buy him slightly more time. They had not. "Devon Park's case," he started. "Yes. It has documentation, communication records, financial trails showing the IP theft pattern." He paused. "It also has something else." "Cole." "A witness account. Someone who was present during Webb's early approach with Devon. Someone who saw the pattern from inside Webb's professional circle and said nothing at the time because they had their own exposure to protect." I put my toast down. "Who?" Cole's jaw moved. "Elliot Vance." The strawberries suddenly tasted like nothing. Or Elliot Vance, Alpha, co-founder of Vance Merritt Group, the original firm Cole had built before restructuring it into Merritt Capital 4 years ago. Elliot, who had been Cole's first real business partner before Marcus Webb had entered the picture. Elliot, who had been at the rooftop event last night in a pale gray suit, shaking hands with the precision of someone who had been practicing looking clean for a very long time. Elliot, who had hugged me at the elevator bank last night and said it was good to see me, Jasper. "You look great." And I had thought he meant it because I had never had a reason to think otherwise. "Elliot knew," I said, not a question. "Elliot was present when Webb first approached Devon Park. According to Devon's attorney, Elliot witnessed the initial conversation where Webb laid out his approach. And he said nothing to Devon, to the firm, to anyone. And to you?" Cole was quiet for exactly 1 second too long. My ability moved, fast, instinctive. The way it activated when the emotional charge in a room spiked past a threshold, not reaching, just receiving. And what came off Cole in that 1 second of silence was not the clean guilt of a man confessing something he should have said sooner. It was older than that. It was the specific weight of something that had been carried long enough to leave marks. "Cole," my voice came out very even. "Did Elliot tell you?" "Yes." "When?" Another pause, shorter, like he had accepted that the answer was already visible. 8 months ago. The kitchen was very quiet. 8 months ago. 2 months before Cole had discovered my name in Devon Park's legal documentation, which meant Cole had not stumbled onto the information through an attorney's favor the way he had framed it. He had known about Marcus Webb's pattern before he went looking. He had gone looking specifically because he already knew and wanted to confirm where I stood in the target sequence. He had known for 8 months. I set my fork down. Very carefully, the way you set something down when your hands are not entirely steady and you do not want anyone to know that. "You told me you found out 6 months ago," I said. "The documentation?" "Yes, 6 months ago." "But Elliot told you 8 months ago." "Yes." "So for 2 months you knew about a predatory scheme targeting Omega professionals in Hartford? You knew Marcus Webb was operating in professional circles that included me? And you said nothing." "I was trying to assess the scope before bringing it to you." "For 2 months. Jasper." "No." I stood up, not dramatically, just stood because sitting felt like a position that required more calm than I currently had access to. "Don't Jasper me right now. Don't use the voice. I need you to understand what you actually did." Cole straightened. He didn't flinch. He held eye contact the way he always did, steady and present. But something behind his eyes was bracing, like a building that knew the wind was coming and had decided to stand into it rather than away from it. "You had 8 months," I said. 8 months of knowing that someone had targeted Devon Park using the same approach pattern he used with me. You had 8 months to tell me. Hulna, to let me look back through my own professional history and understand what had happened. To let me make informed choices about my own safety. I stopped. Let that sit. And instead, you managed it. You contained it. You made decisions about my exposure and my information and my career without ever once thinking that maybe I deserved to be the one in the room where those decisions got made. I was protecting you. From what, Cole? From information about my own life? From having to relive every interaction you had with him? From the specific feeling of realizing someone you trusted was using you? I know what that does to a person. His voice stayed level, but something underneath it had changed frequency. Something real and unscripted moving through the composed surface. I know because it happened to me, with Elliot. I stopped. Cole exhaled. Long, quiet. The exhale of something that had been held compressed for a very long time, finally being allowed to expand. Elliot didn't just witness Webb's approach with Devon, he said. Elliot facilitated it in the early stages. He made introductions, vouched for Webb's integrity in rooms where it mattered. By the time he came to me 8 months ago, it was because he was starting to understand the legal exposure, and he needed someone to know he had tried to stop it eventually. Cole's jaw tightened. He used the word eventually like it was a virtue. The kitchen had a different shape now than it had 10 minutes ago. Elliot was your friend, I said quietly. Elliot was my partner for 6 years. And he came to you with a partial confession to protect himself. Yes. And you absorbed that, carried it. And then when you found my name in the documentation 2 months later, you didn't tell me because you had already spent 2 months understanding what it felt like to find out someone you trusted had been operating against you, and you did not want me to feel that. Cole looked at me across the island, and the thing behind his eyes now was not controlled or managed or arranged. It was just open. Raw in the specific way of something that had been protected too long and was tired. I handled it wrong, he said. I know that now. Standing here, watching your face, I know that I took something that was yours and tried to carry it for you because I could not stand the thought of you hurting the way I hurt when Elliot told me, and that was not my choice to make. No, I said, it wasn't. I'm sorry. Not a CEO apology. So not optics and corrective measures, just 2 words, direct and undecorated, landing in the space between us with the full weight of what he meant by them. I'm genuinely sorry, Jasper. My chest did something complicated. I looked at the plate in front of me, the decorative strawberries, the eggs that had gone slightly cold during the revelation that had just restructured the entire morning. Elliot was at the event last night, I said. Yes. He hugged me. Cole's expression moved, tightened around the edges. I know. I watched it happen. And you didn't say anything then either. No. Why not? Because I had spent 6 months trying to find the right moment, and last night wasn't it? And I kept telling myself there would be a better time, and then... He stopped. And then the bourbon turned the volume down. I finished quietly. Yes. We looked at each other across the marble counter, and the cold eggs and the decorative strawberries, and 11 years of a friendship that was currently in the middle of a significant structural assessment. I picked up my coffee, finished it, set the mug down. I need to think, I said. Okay. Not about us, about Elliot, about Webb, about what I'm going to do with this information now that it's actually mine to do something with. Okay. And I need you to not try to manage what I decide. Okay. Cole. Yeah. I heard what you said about why you did it, about Elliot. I met his eyes. I'm not dismissing that. I'm holding it. But I need you to understand that protecting me from pain is not the same as protecting me. And I need you to know the difference going forward. He nodded, once. The nod of a man who had understood something he was going to carry for a long time. Going forward, he said quietly. And the way he said it, careful and certain around those 2 words, told me he had heard everything in them that I had meant. The morning light through the penthouse windows had shifted, fuller now, brighter. Hartford was completely awake below us, moving through its Friday with no awareness of the quiet earthquake that had been happening 20 floors up in a kitchen with excellent countertops and decorative strawberries. I pushed my plate aside. "I need your attorney's contact information," I said. Cole blinked. "Right now?" "Yes, because if Marcus Webb has a file with my name in it, I want someone legally authorized to be annoyed about that on my behalf. Immediately." Cole reached for his phone, then stopped, looked at me. "You're going to corroborate Devon's case. I'm going to find out what I have that's useful and then make an informed decision, like an adult who is in possession of all relevant facts about her own life." I raised an eyebrow. "His own life? Obviously." Cole almost smiled. "Almost. Obviously." He unlocked his phone and slid it across the counter with his attorney's contact pulled up on the screen. I looked at it, then at him. "After I make this call," I said, "you and I are going to have a longer conversation." "I know. About Elliot, about the 8 months, about what comes next." "I know. And you're going to answer every question I ask, with the actual information, on a not the managed version?" "Yes." I picked up his phone, then put it back down. "One more thing." "Yeah. That apology you just gave me, the real one." I looked at him steadily. "It was a good apology. I want you to know I received it, but receiving it is not the same as everything being resolved." "I know," he said, and he did know. I could see it. "I'm not asking for resolution. I'm just asking for the chance to do it right going forward." The phrase landed quietly between us. I picked up his phone again, started to dial, and the thing I felt underneath the irritation and the restructured morning and the weight of everything Elliot Vance had put in motion 8 months ago was something I wasn't ready to name yet, but it was there. Sitting in Cole Merritt's kitchen like it had decided, quietly and without asking permission, on to stay. Cole's attorney picked up on the third ring. Professional, measured, the voice of someone who charged by the hour and wanted you to feel every minute of it. I gave my name, explained the connection to Devon Park's case in 3 clean sentences, scheduled a call for Monday morning, hung up, slid Cole's phone back across the counter without looking at him. "Monday," I said. "I'll send you everything I have before then." "All of it." "All of it," he confirmed. I nodded once. Then I picked up my jacket from where it had apparently spent the night draped over a bar stool, which told me something about last night's timeline that I was filing under information I would process later in a safe and private location, and I put it on. Cole watched me, not with the managed expression, not with the CEO arrangement, just watched. The way he had watched Dream Me standing at the edge of that gray shoreline, like he was noting every detail and trying to determine what it meant that I was still there. "I'm not leaving because I'm done," I said, before he could construct whatever he was building behind those eyes. "I'm leaving because I need to think in a space that doesn't smell like you." He absorbed that. "That's fair. Your scent is very distracting. This is a you problem, and also somehow my problem, and I resent it." "Noted. I'm going home. I'm going to sit with Gerald and drink tea and think about the fact that my best friend has been quietly dismantling himself, trying to protect me from information that was mine to have. And I'm going to figure out how I feel about all of it when I'm not standing in the location where most of it happened." Cole stood straight, arms at his sides. No crossing, no guarding. Just standing open the way he rarely did, like he had decided the managed posture was not something this moment deserved. "Can I call you tonight?" he asked. "Yes. Not to manage anything." "Correct. If I detect managing, I will hang up." "Understood." I picked up my bag from the entryway where it had also spent the night. I stopped at the door, turned around. Cole was still in the kitchen doorway, still watching, still wearing that expression I had spent 11 years not letting myself name. "Cole, yeah. For what it's worth." I held his gaze. "I understand why you did it. The part about Elliot. About not wanting me to feel what you felt when someone you trusted turned out to be operating against you." I paused. "That part I understand, and I'm holding it carefully even while I'm irritated about the rest." Something moved across his face. Quiet and significant, the way tectonic things were quiet before you felt them. "Thank you," he said. Just that. I nodded, opened the door. The hallway of his building was cool and neutral, cream walls and recessed lighting, and the particular silence of expensive real estate that had been soundproofed to within an inch of its life. The elevator at the end of the hall waited with its doors closed like a period at the end of a sentence. I walked toward it. My ability was quiet now. Not dormant exactly, just resting, the way it did after high emotional exposure. I had a theory that it ran on the same internal resource as the part of me that processed feelings, which would explain why I was currently running on fumes in both departments. I pressed the elevator button. The doors opened immediately. I stepped in, turned around. The hallway stretched back toward Cole's door, which was closed now. He had not followed me out, and I had not expected him to. Cole understood the difference between pursuit and patience in a way that most alphas I had encountered professionally and personally did not. It was one of the first things I had noticed about him at 19 years old, and it was one of the things I had stored in the part of my memory I labeled "do not examine too closely." The elevator doors closed. I leaned against the back wall and let myself have exactly 30 seconds of being completely unorganized about everything. 30 seconds of standing there, jacket on, bag over my shoulder, in an elevator that smelled faintly of cedar, because of course it did, because the universe apparently found my suffering amusing. I thought about the shore in his dream, the way Dream Cole had watched and walked and never gotten close enough. I thought about 8 months, about Elliot Vance's pale gray suit and his hug and his, "It's good to see you, Jasper," and the specific kind of charm that felt like genuine warmth right up until you understood its architecture. Jonan, I thought about the moment Cole had said, "I don't know how to say it without changing everything," and how I had known exactly what he meant because I had been rearranging the same knowledge into the shape of something manageable for longer than I was willing to calculate. 30 seconds ended. I pushed off the wall and stood up straight. My name was Jasper Hayes, 28 years old, Omega, licensed architect, dreamwalker, owner of one houseplant named Gerald, who was going to need water and an explanation when I got home. I was not someone who lost things. I was someone who figured things out. The elevator reached the lobby. I walked out into the Hartford morning, and the air was cold and bright and smelled like October and car exhaust and the particular quality of a city that had no idea what had just happened 20 floors above it. I started walking, not running, not retreating, just walking, the way you walked when you needed movement to think and thinking, to feel, and both at once to get anywhere worth going. My ability settled in my chest like a frequency finding its correct pitch, and I let myself think, for the first time without immediately rearranging the thought into something safer, about what it would mean. Cole Merritt and Jasper Hayes in 11 years and one drunken night that had turned every light on in a building everyone had agreed to pretend was empty. What it would cost, what it would change, what it already had changed without asking anyone's permission. The thing I had felt in his kitchen, sitting there like it had decided to stay. I stopped at the corner of Trumbull and Asylum, which was a genuinely unfortunate intersection name for the emotional moment I was having, and I stood there while Hartford traffic moved around me, and I let the feeling be what it was without filing it or managing it or rearranging it into anything other than its actual shape. It was terrifying. It was also, underneath the terrifying, something I recognized from the oldest parts of myself. The parts that had always known and simply agreed, for practical reasons, to keep quiet about it. My phone buzzed. A text. Cole. It said, "Gerald needs you to come home. You are his primary caregiver, and he is not emotionally equipped for this level of uncertainty." I stared at it. Then I laughed. Real and loud, right there on the corner of Trumbull and Asylum, in last night's clothes with my bag over my shoulder, and Cole Merritt's scent still doing inconvenient things to my nervous system. I typed back, "Gerald is more resilient than you think. He has survived neglect and inconsistent watering schedules. He will survive one morning." The response came in 4 seconds. "I'm going to tell him you said that. He doesn't have ears, Cole. He has feelings. You don't know that. Neither do you." I put my phone in my pocket, started walking again. The smile on my face was doing something I wasn't going to interrogate right now. What I was going to do was go home, water Gerald, change my clothes, drink the kind of tea that required a kettle and patience. And then I was going to sit with everything the morning had given me and figure out what came next. Not what Cole needed, not what was safe or sensible or strategically sound. What I, Jasper Hayes, actually wanted, for once, without rearranging it first. The Hartford skyline stretched behind me as I walked, pale and bright and completely indifferent. Somewhere in it, 20 floors up in a penthouse with excellent countertops and decorative strawberries. An alpha who had been caring too much for too long was presumably cleaning up breakfast dishes and thinking about the same thing I was thinking about. What comes next? The wind moved through the street, cold, October specific, carrying cedar faintly because apparently that was just my life now. I pulled my jacket tighter and kept walking. I made it exactly 4 blocks. Well, 4 blocks of Hartford morning air and October wind, and the very mature, very composed internal monologue of a man who had decided he was going home to think things through properly and responsibly and without making any additional major life decisions before noon. 4 blocks. Then I stopped. Stood on the sidewalk outside a coffee shop that was just opening, chairs still upside down on tables visible through the glass. And I had a conversation with myself that lasted approximately 45 seconds and covered the following points. Point 1. I had spent 11 years being reasonable about Cole Merritt. Point 2. Reasonable had gotten me to the corner of Trumbull and Asylum, laughing at a text about a houseplant. Point 3. Gerald was, in fact, more resilient than either of us. Point 4. I knew exactly what I wanted, and I had known it in the elevator. I had known it on the shoreline in his dream. I had known it every single time his scent moved through a room, and my nervous system did that thing I had spent 11 years categorizing as proximity response and not what it actually was. Point 5. I was Jasper Hayes. I did not walk away from things I wanted because the timing was complicated and the morning had been a lot. I walked toward them, with full information and both eyes open and whatever sass was required to survive the arrival. 45 seconds. Conclusion reached. I turned around. I walked back the 4 blocks at a pace that was not quite running because I had dignity, but was definitely the pace of a man who had made a decision and saw no reason to delay its execution. In the lobby of Cole's building greeted me with its neutral cream walls and its soundproof silence and its elevator that opened immediately like it had been waiting. I pressed 20. The ride up was the longest 30 seconds of recent memory. The doors opened. I walked down the hall and knocked on Cole's door with 3 knocks. Even, deliberate. The knock of a person who had thought about this for 4 blocks and 45 seconds and arrived at a conclusion they were prepared to stand behind. Silence for a moment. Then the door opened. Cole was still in the same clothes. He had clearly been in the process of cleaning up because he had a dish towel over his shoulder that he had forgotten was there, which was the most undone I had ever seen Cole Merritt look, and it was somehow the detail that made everything click fully into place. He looked at me. I looked at him. "You came back," he said. "I made it 4 blocks. 4 blocks is farther than I expected. I have strong legs and good intentions. Neither of them was enough." I put my hand on the doorframe. "Can I come back in?" He stepped back immediately. No hesitation, no managing. "Just open the door wider and let me through." I walked in, turned around. He closed the door and faced me, and we stood in his entryway with Hartford visible through the far windows, bright and indifferent as ever. And I said what I had walked 4 blocks away from and 4 blocks back to say. "I don't want to think about this separately," I said. "I have done enough separate thinking for 11 years and I am genuinely exhausted by it. So here is what I know. I know you made decisions you shouldn't have made, and I know why you made them, and I know what it cost you to tell me the truth this morning when you could have kept managing it. I know you have been carrying Elliot Vance and Marcus Webb and my name in a legal file and whatever you felt every time you looked at me for longer than you should have carried any of it alone." I took a breath. "And I know that I am an omega with the ability to walk through people's dreams and the one dream I have walked through more than any other in the last 3 years. When my ability slips sideways without invitation in the night is yours." Cole went very still. "You never told me that," he said quietly. "No, I was rearranging it into something manageable." "I've stopped doing that." I held his gaze. "You were always at a shoreline, and I was always just out of reach. And you always looked at me like the tide was going to take me before you figured out what to say." His jaw moved. Something behind his eyes opened fully. No management, no arrangement. Just Cole Merritt completely unguarded in his own entryway with a dish towel on his shoulder. "The tide didn't take you," he said. "No, I walked back." I crossed the entryway, stopped in front of him, close enough that his scent wrapped around me, and my omega biology did its thing, and this time I let it. All of it. The recognition, the warmth, the frequency locking in. I walked back because I am not someone who loses things. I'm someone who figures things out. And I've figured this one out. Yet Cole, 11 years late, but here we are. He lifted his hand, slow, careful, the back of his fingers against my jaw again. The same question as before, same tenderness, but steadier now. Both of us steadier now. "Jasper, don't make a speech," I said. "You'll ruin it." He laughed, low and real and warm, and it moved through the entryway and settled into the walls like it belonged there. Then he pulled me in and kissed me the way the morning had been building toward from the moment I had opened my eyes in his room and smelled cedar and thought I am completely and utterly cooked. Not soft this time, not careful, present, full. Both hands now, one at my jaw and one at my back. And I grabbed the front of his shirt and kissed him back with 11 years of rearranged feelings, finally standing up straight and taking up the space they had always deserved. When we broke apart, we were both breathing differently. "Okay," I said. "Okay," he agreed. "We still have to deal with Marcus Webb." "Monday. And Elliot Vance. Also Monday. And you still owe me a full and complete apology tour that does not involve managing the optics. I'll schedule it." "Don't schedule it, just do it." "Right." He was still holding me. Neither of us had moved apart, and neither of us was going to, which was information. "Jasper, Cole, I'm glad you only made it 4 blocks. I looked up at him, at the face I had been reading for 11 years, earring the jaw and the steady eyes, and the 2-millimeter smile that was currently significantly wider than 2 millimeters, wider than I had ever seen it, wide enough to change the whole shape of him into something I wanted to memorize from this distance. "Gerald is going to need so much therapy when he finds out about this," I said. Cole laughed again, pulled me closer. "We'll get him a better pot," he said into my hair. "Something with good drainage, as an apology. He would appreciate that. He's very into emotional support and adequate root space, just like his owner. I prefer the term primary caregiver." I pressed my forehead against his shoulder, let his scent do every inconvenient thing it wanted. "And for the record, this doesn't mean you get to make decisions for me." "It doesn't," he agreed. It means you make them with me." His arms tightened slightly, not possessive, just certain. The certainty of someone who had been waiting at a shoreline long enough that the arrival of the thing he was waiting for felt like something he needed to confirm was real. "With you," he said, like a promise he had already decided to keep before I asked for it. Outside, Hartford moved through its morning, ordinary and loud and completely unbothered. The October light fell through the penthouse windows and landed across his entryway floor in long, pale strips. And somewhere across the city in my apartment, Gerald sat in his windowsill doing what houseplants do, which is survive on less than they deserve and keep growing anyway, which honestly was not a bad model for the rest of us. I stayed right where I was. And for the first time in 11 years, I didn't rearrange a single thing about it.